Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Roads and Transportation Society of Engineers Ireland for our presentation today on the Barrow Blueway Placemaking Plan. A really interesting talk that I've been looking forward to for a while. I hope you all had a lovely break over the Christmas and a happy New Year to you all. So I'd like to introduce our speakers today. We've got Carolyn Rollo from Meinhardt. Carolyn leads Meinhardt's business in Scotland and the north of England and is passionate about the role the built environment has to play in enhancing and creating sustainable communities. Carolyn's been working as a mobility planner for the last 16 years, and in addition to her role with Meinhardt, is also the chair of the CIHT in Scotland. We've also got Norma Forrest, who's a senior administrator in the marketing and communications department for Waterways Ireland. Norma's role is to manage the visitor experience and work with project partners to deliver a product that meets the visitor expectation. Helen Mulhall is the Rural Development Officer with County Kildare Leader Partnership. She specialises in supporting local communities and enterprises to develop social inclusion, economic and environmental projects through the Leader Rural Development Programme. And finally, we've got Gerard is a senior engineer with Waterways Ireland and is responsible for the Barrow line of the Grand Canal and the Barrow navigation. Gerard is part of the Barrow Blueway steering group with the responsibility for delivering this project, as well as project managing the elements of the Blueway construction that are being constructed by Waterways Ireland operations team. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Carolyn to kick off today's proceedings.
Thanks, Brendan. So just first of all, I'd like to thank Engineers Ireland for the opportunity today for our team to come along and to share the learning on this project with you. So we'll talk to you about the objectives of the project and how we went about it. I'll start off and then I'll hand you to Norma, who'll talk to you a little bit about what is a Blueway and discuss the Blueways initiative and this one in particular. My slides are jumping around a little bit, just give me a moment, there's a delay. Then we'll go to Carolyn, who will talk to you about the brief that they were given and how they interpreted and delivered on that. And finally, then Gerard will talk to you a little bit about the work on the ground on Blueway, where we're at the moment, and we'll move then to Q&A. So to introduce this project, why we came together was the Blueway initiative was already up and running, and in County Kildare, there had been planning permission granted for the Blueway. We had talked about what was needed to enhance this opportunity and to make the most of the asset. We knew that the pathway would be developed, but it was all the things around that that needed to make it an experience. Some work had been done in looking at the economic potential, but as a group, we were looking at some of the orderly things that we needed to add along the route, like signage and ancillary infrastructure. So the more we started to talk about it, we realised we needed more than signs. What we were really looking at here was a placemaking approach. To me, what that means is a design approach or a process that really puts the community and the users at the heart of the project. And it's a way of shaping public spaces that connects the people of the area to the assets and the place. And really by doing all of that, we create an identity. So we were clear from the beginning, I suppose, that we wanted something that was a little bit more than just signage. So myself, Norma and Annette Keaveney from Kildare County Council came together as a steering group. And we put together our development brief for what we wanted to achieve. The route itself goes from Robertstown in County Kildare, which is at the north of the county, down to Athy at the south of County Kildare, and it traverses through part of County Laois. And it's on the Barrow line of the Grand Canal. So I suppose it's a unique location and we wanted to do it justice. We came together as a group to develop our brief, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what that contained. Following that, we went through a public procurement process and Meinhardt were appointed. Once that was in place and we had the successful bid, we then went ahead and put a funding application together and worked with Meinhardt then to develop and oversee the development of the plan. So after that introduction, I'm now going to hand you over to Norma, who will talk to you a little bit about the Blueway initiative and what that means generally in relation to this project. And I'll come back to you then in a little while.
I'd like to introduce you to the concept of a Blueway, just to explain what that actually means for those of you who are not familiar with the brand. It's a brand that was developed, I suppose, to represent a tourism product. And that product is built around a series of outdoor recreational trails with water at the core of the offering. So I suppose it's similar in a way to the Greenway brand, which has become synonymous with cycling. So Blueways provide visitors with ways to enjoy activities on and alongside water. So as you can see from the definition at the top of the page, A key distinction for Blueways is that there is service provision. So these multi-activity recreational trails are activated by providers who facilitate access, and that's really important in terms of breaking down barriers to participation, especially in water sports, where people don't have the equipment or the competence to participate. And it provides visitors with memorable experiences, for example, through guided paddles or, under instruction experiences. So water is at the core of the offering for a Blueway, and that's whether you're enjoying a walk or a cycle alongside the water or actually being on it, be it a river, lake, canal or coast. The water is central to the brand. Visitors are encouraged to stay longer by presenting all of the recreational experiences within a context of places to stay, eat and go within the destination. So it encourages people to stay longer. The reality of this for Blueway developers is that as well as developing a physical product, we have to maintain really close working relationships with activity providers and the local tourism trade. So Blueways in Ireland are managed by a partnership which supports the development of high quality Blueway product across the island of Ireland. It's on a cross-border basis. And the map shows the extent of the completed and the proposed and the in progress Blueway developments. Just to let you know about the Blueway accreditation process. So the Blueway partnership is all Ireland. It's comprised of Waterways Ireland together with the NGBs for sport and tourism, both in Ireland and Northern Ireland. And that partnership has established standards and guidance on the development of Blueways, together with an independent accreditation scheme. And that is to ensure that there's consistent and high quality visitor offerings being developed. There are 6 fundamental factors which are deemed critical to the success of Blueways. The first of those is the experience. So we need to make sure that the experience that is being provided is engaging and attractive, and that it meets visitors' needs in terms of the facilities, wayfinding, trip planning. It needs to have a distinct sense of place as well. The second element is safety. So risks should be appropriately managed, and that's particularly important in a water environment. Environmental and conservation considerations, the Blueway should at least mitigate against any negative impact, and it can potentially have positive environmental impacts and benefits through increasing awareness and access to these waterways. The Blueway obviously should be accessible to all and ideally have sustainable transport links. Technically, the Blueway trails should be consistent with the recognised standards for walking, cycling and paddling. And finally, the Blueway should be sustainable in that there are structures, management and funding appropriate to sustain this high quality visitor offering. So those are the factors upon which the accreditation of Blueways is based. Looking in detail at the Barrow Blueway itself, as Helen explained, it's a 46-kilometre long series of multi-activity trails. So those trails are both on and alongside the Barrow line of the Grand Canal, and that stretches from Lowtown, Robertstown in County Kildare all the way to Athy. And it links the towns of Rathangan, Monasterevin and Vickerstown along the route, as well as several other settlements. It's constructed to 2.5 metres width with an on-bound surface of compacted 4-inch stone on the majority of the trail. Obviously, there are bound surfaces at the safe road crossing points at each of the bridges. There's 10 locks along the route and 9 put-in points for canoes at the jetties. So the canal itself provides an ideal environment for novice paddlers, and this is complemented by the shared use trail along the water. It's a long distance leisure experience, and that suits both locals and tourists. So it's a platform and a playground for both domestic and international visitors, as well as locals. It will generate not only economic gain for the region through visitor spend, but it will also impact positively on the physical and mental health and well-being of the local communities. So we have visitor counters, for example, at 5 locations along the route, reporting really positive initial counts in the region of 200,000 per annum. So we kind of moderate that figure and apply a round trip correction factor, which takes into account that some people pass a counter on their way out on a linear route and also on the way back. So even reducing that by 50%, we're looking at figures of in 2022 of close to 100,000, and we're well over 100,000 during 2023, so a 27% year-on-year increase. So really positive increases in usage on that trail already, which isn't officially open. I will hand back to Helen for the next section of the presentation.
Thanks, Norma. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about when we were developing the specification for the plan, what we were aiming to do, what we wanted to achieve from it. So I suppose we began really with, we looked at, we wanted a shopping list essentially. We had quite a good vision for the plan, for the route, but really, to advance to the stage where we could go out to procurement for things like benches, signs, interpretation panels. We wanted to make sure we're making the right decisions and putting the right features in the right areas. And really what we were looking at is trying to do this for the route as a whole, to make sure that there was no competition between spaces along the route, that the sense of identity would belong to the Blueway as opposed to particular nodes along the Blueway that might then compete with one another. So it was important to bring them all together. Some of the things we were thinking about is, we really wanted to enhance the space and make it exciting for visitors, but at the same time, we didn't want to, go too far and urbanize what is a lovely, beautiful rural space. We wanted visitors to have a sense of comfort and to be able to enjoy the experience without being worried about getting lost or anything like that. But then at the same time, not to take away from the rugged natural beauty of it. So there was a bit of thought into how we would, I suppose, put out our wish list for the consultants to interpret. And what we did was we broke it down into 3 sections or 3 themes. So we said in the first instance that we wanted to look at what was essential for visitors to enjoy the experience. And really that would be something very practical like the wayfinding. Secondly, we wanted them to look at what were the appropriate interventions. So what we wanted to take into account here is that this route was already in use. There was already some users identifying this as the Barrow Way, which is a walking route. It's connected to a European via, the Torres Columbanus. Parts of the site are proposed natural heritage area, and it intersects with 2 special areas of conservation, the River Barrow and the River Nore. So we really wanted to make sure we were taking into account all of the unique properties of the route as well. And then thirdly, we wanted to look at what we could bring in terms of gateway features or surprising or exciting features that would help to define the space and make it distinctive. And, that was quite an ambitious wish list that we put out. But even at that, we were thinking, is there a way that the exceptional can be brought into the ordinary? Can we have, for example, something really unique in our benches that makes these functional and they're essential for rest, but also they tell the story of the place as well. So we really wanted quite a lot from Meinhardt. We gave them quite a tall task. But then I suppose what we really wanted to achieve as well was that this plan would be available to a wide variety of audiences, because it's such a large project, and it's going to take place over a long protracted period of time where there will be incremental developments. So the route will open, but we can also add things to it over time, and new services and service providers will come on board. So we wanted, I suppose, quite a long shopping list of different actions that community members might be able to take up. For example, if the local Tidy Towns group wanted to bring something into their area, they would be able to pick up this template and have a look at it and see what was appropriate for them to introduce as well. Just waiting for the slide to move. Yeah. So I talked a little bit now about how we resourced the project. So the steering group came together. We had our winning tender, and we put together a project application under the Rural Development Leader Fund. Now I have the advantage of, this is my day-to-day work. I support community groups, small businesses and clubs to access leader funding. So we took this on as what we would consider an in-house or a strategic project. So with the steering group, we put forward the application, and it goes to an independent evaluation committee firstly, and secondly, on their recommendation, it goes to the local community development committee, who assess the application against the rural development plan for our area. They look at the viability and the sustainability of the project, and they were satisfied that it was of value to the area. The funding comes from the LEADER programme, which is a combination of CAP funding and matched then by exchequer funds. So as, I suppose, an independent nonprofit on the steering group, CKLP was in a position to lead this where a statutory agency wouldn't be. So it was a unique way of tackling, I suppose, the gap of funding that was there at the time. I suppose it also influenced our approach in that it wasn't just about securing funding for the project. It was also about informing that approach, that it was community-led, that we were bringing in, consideration to what was already there. Some communities already had different features or stories that they wanted interpreted. And it wasn't a hard sell really, because the people of the area have really wanted this. There's a huge appetite for the Blueway along this route, and there's huge community behind it. So the consultation and the involvement of community along the way has been a really unique feature of this project as well. So Carolyn, I'm going to pass on to you now to talk about the plan and development of it itself.
Great, thank you. Thanks, guys. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. That's fab. So as very nicely introduced there, Meinhardt were commissioned to do this piece of work, which was actually a very fantastic study and a real great way of rethinking what we think about place. So we really certainly enjoyed that. So the aim, as Helen's obviously said, we had a list there, probably a very ambitious list, but also a very doable list. But we kind of subsumed that down the fact of helping to support with other items running in tandem the accreditation of the Barrow Blueway. And very fortunately, the criteria which drives that aligns very well to some of the other things that Helen was asking for and looking for from the project. So that helped us give us some form of scope or objectives and things that we can use to appraise the actions that I'm talking about later that would come out and develop from there. And from there, we set out, as any transport planner or anyone used to working on appraisal schemes of projects, defining some objectives, which we took from the project brief and worked with the stakeholder group and took on board some of the early comments of site visits and the like to develop all of these objectives. And in the back of our mind, we were always thinking anything that we do must have an ability to contribute to or support to these objectives, because as you've seen there, the 46-kilometre route, a national and international asset, we didn't want to get too muddled of overthinking things and to try and focus very specifically on communities, visitors, users and things like that without muddying the waters too much. So in terms of process and methodology, we spent a lot of time doing some scene setting and background analysis. So in the office, collating everything that's been done before. And this isn't the first element of work that's come out. And obviously we're in stage 2 of the accreditation. So there's already been pre-feasibility, pre-planning work. Construction work was also already underway. So there was a raft of information that we all had to get our heads around there. And the fundamentals obviously being the accreditation criteria, the economic plan. We had access to data from pre-COVID and post-COVID in terms of user numbers. We had ecology reports, all of these things like that. But we also used this as the opportunity of saying, well, if I'm a member of the community or if I'm a visitor, how do I find out about the Barrow? So there was time spent almost just going on Google and typing in Barrow Blueway. How do I get there? What is it? Where is it? To help us contextualize what everyone else is seeing, what the people we're targeting are seeing. So that was a useful element there. And in that background setting, it also allowed us to think about resilience and future planning. So obviously the Athy bypass is now up and running, but at the time we did the project, it wasn't. So we had to think about, well, how would that potentially impact the Barrow, the users, car parking, access, amenity, all of those kind of things. So a bit of opportunity to think about things differently there, which was good. Site visits and survey data collections. We actually did this over about 3 or 4 days, which again, a fantastic jolly out of the office. We all really enjoyed ourselves. Walking, cycling the route. We developed an app-based system of being able to geocode and locate everything that we found along the route. So we could take a picture, we knew its exact location, and we could also attribute a characteristic to that of, well, look, that's a constraint. I got to a point of wayfinding and I didn't know where to go. Or here's an opportunity, I've come along this route and I found somewhere to go and get a cup of coffee or the likes like that. So it was a good way of recording all of that in together. Our stakeholder engagement, so we compiled a list with Norma and Helen at the start of the project of people that we would like to talk to. So some of the key elements, so we talked to people actually on site. So we got them to come and meet us at the Barrow. So we spoke to people in Vickerstown and Llangan, Monasterevin and Thigh. It was really good to get people out onto the route and actually start pointing out the good bits and the so-called bad bits. From that, we actually learned a lot, great anecdotal information. And kind of Helen said there's that perception that we're in this rural location, there's nobody there. But we were finding all this information out that there's been visitors from Texas and Australia, really popular community uses of dog walking, active travel, exercise, all of these kind of things. So that helped us understand the passion that people have for the area, which basically just made our job so much easier when people are passionate about something and want to see it bettered and improved. So that's always a nice way to go. So sorry, I should also mention we followed up with stakeholders as well, with emails and likes as well, people that we maybe missed on site, and collated everything that and leading into the synthesis of findings. I think everyone ever knows always the most important part of the project, and a very time-consuming element, but very worthwhile, of collating all of this information. We put everything into maps, pictures, plans, call-out boxes, all of these kind of things to basically set out, well, what we found, what were the good bits, what were the bad bits, all of these kind of things into that one element. So that was good. And then in the gap analysis, given the scale of everything, and given that we were talking about elements which have a subjective nature of what does place mean to one person may not mean the same thing to someone else, we had to try and define our user groups and our nodes to help us better ultimately develop the actions, but better contextualize what we found. So say, for example, we wanted to say, well, who are our user groups? So we defined those as people who were coming internationally, people who were coming nationally. We defined the community groups. We then go into the next level of detail. Well, how are those people getting here? Every group has a different need. You know, the person from Texas is going to need something different than the person who's out walking their dog. How are they getting there? Again, someone's coming from the airport, someone's coming from their house. We had to think about all of these elements as well. And from that and the findings and the baseline, we wanted to then develop a set of nodes, almost where our priority gateways and locations were. So things like a Thigh or Monasterevin, places where you have a strategic connection and where the end user is going to expect to find something that they wouldn't expect in a rural context. So we want to have some sort of public transport access to a hotel, toilets, coffees, all of these kind of things. And then looking at the secondary nodes and then the more waypointing nodes as well along there, and defining what we would like each of those points to have. And what we also tried to think about there was the distance that people had to travel. So we tried to define, if you were starting a route at X point, when are you going to be like, right, I'm hungry, I need to stop, or I need to go to the bathroom, or things like that, which then helps us identify what we would like to see at each point along the route. So actions, I'm going to talk about the actions in the next slide because I've got those in a bit more detail. So from all of this element, we defined over 100 actions, which was a serious amount of actions there. And obviously everything was agreed with Norma and Helen and Dear, and we all went through each one almost pretty well, fine-tooth comb of the wording of them, what was going to stay or what was going to go. But for each action, and I'm sure they'll say, we didn't get rid of very many at all, I don't think. We just kind of tweaked things because we wanted to be ambitious and out there, and all of them were developed from a sensible evidence base. So that helped with the process. So for each of the actions, we almost defined a reference. Everything was plotted on a map, or there was a specific location there, description of what that action is. More importantly, how the action is responding to the gap, what the benefits of implementing that action would be, when is it going to be done? So is it a priority? And Helen talked there about essentials, appropriate and exceptional, the timings as well of those. Who's going to need to be involved in doing those, and who's going to be responsible. We also use this as an opportunity to collate and pull forward everything from the previous reports that had been recommended. So say, for example, there's recommendations in the economic plan, which may not have necessarily attributed to placemaking. We wanted to make sure the client had a one-stop shop of everything, all the recommendations, all the actions in one place. So you don't need to refer to other reports. Everything was just in that one spot there. So some of the actions that we came up with, and I don't know if the link has been shared, but if you type in Barrow Blueway Placemaking Plan into Google, you will have access to the report, so you can see in more detail of specific actions there. And actions varied from things like wayfinding, where the wayfinding needs to be, the form of that wayfinding. We provided some examples of what that wayfinding might look like, and as Helen said, could it be more specific to the area? Could we pull in cultural or historical references to add a kind of level of importance, and also a tourism element there? Also actions for the local community. We had actions across water sports. We had actions across your basic facilities and toilets and the likes like that. And we also had actions around promoting and marketing of the route as well, to bring that kind of community buy-in, but also attract the audience that the intended is looking for. And where we'd identified some actions that's almost hard to contextualize, you know, we would, if you do events or art installations or things like that, we pulled in some case studies as well in the report to better say, well, that's actually what that looks like, which is always good. So why is the project special? Well, I'm biased, so I think the project is special. But this is also one of those ones, and there's probably a few consultants on the team where it can always be difficult to start a project where we have such a large buy-in stakeholder group. And you saw from that first introduction slide all of the logos of everyone that was involved or contributed or impacted upon the study along with the stakeholders. But the positive all of that was that everyone was very passionate about the Barrow, which made life a lot easier. So that was very much appreciated. And obviously I know Helen's talked about funding and resilience, obviously the buzzword we wanted to be in, and hence why we programmed the actions to try and be resilient there. Optimistic, we didn't leave any stone unturned. We just threw everything at it there as well. And we became passionate about the project too, because everyone else was, and there was already things on the ground. We came off some fantastic community facilities, particularly around Vickerstown, with children's playgrounds, likes like that. So it made life easier to build on the fact that there was already successes there. I think we probably don't go into too many of these in detail, but I think probably the fifth one down there is probably for me the important one there, of providing a consolidated one-stop shop, evidence-based driven action plan, like Helen said, of a shopping list that you can just pick off the shelf and get on with it. You don't need to go back and go, we need to do another case for change, or we need to do something else. No, we've already justified that. Let's just move forward. Everything's been signed off, and then off we go. If no one's actually been along here to the Dilly Dally Cafe, this was a lovely little spot. Here we go. The challenges here, probably by way of summary of the overarching project there, I would suggest the biggest one likely being a future element of balancing that tourism and community function. And that's why we did develop very specific actions specific to the community. Obviously generic actions such as wayfinding, access to a cup of coffee and things impact everyone, but that's where we wanted to pull in more community events and the likes like that. So there's always that perceived. I mean, I live near Edinburgh, so every summer I get really annoyed about the tourists. So we don't want that to happen there. We want to be able to see that as a positive contribution and everyone coming in together and working that and seeing a benefit of each other and developing and supporting the Barrow. Opportunities, I hope, are fairly self-explanatory there, but I think what we didn't actually say, and I'm hoping you can see from the pictures and the context, that this is actually a lovely spot, absolutely fantastic area, a fantastic asset, a real place to give you a bit of mental, physical stimulation. It will mean lots of different things to lots of different people. And it was our job to kind of capture that and build on that and support that. Right, Gerard, you're up next.
Hello, everybody, and thanks very much for joining us today. I suppose I'm just going to have a quick chat with you about where we are now. And just before I do that, just to give a bit of context on where we've been, the Blueway as a project, as a construction project, hit the ground during the COVID pandemic, and we are at this stage very near its completion. So 2024 will bring us right up to that point. So within that kind of window, what I would say really is that sequencing and timing is key to the success of any project. And this was certainly the case for the Barrow Blueway and this placemaking plan. As you probably got from the previous contributors, the project was always very warmly welcomed by the local communities. However, the undertaking of the placemaking plan, whilst the construction of the pathway was underway, has delivered a lot of positives, both to the placemaking plan and also to the construction team. For the placemaking plan, the public could physically see the Blueway coming into their area. The machines were there, the pathway was coming towards them, and so they were eager to engage with both us and the Meinhardt team. You can't beat a few diggers and a few trucks to get people motivated. So this presented us with a wealth of knowledge and opportunity for the placemaking plan and Carolyn and her team, but also for the construction team, and where I would have sat for most of the time. This additional engagement vehicle, I suppose you could call the placemaking plan, this additional engagement increased the public's ownership in what we were doing. And you've heard that throughout this presentation of the passion that the local people have for what we're doing here. But that ownership of the project certainly helped on the construction side, because it delivered public patience and support for the construction project and the process, and I suppose the local inconveniences that do occur while you're constructing. Carolyn, can you move that on there? Thanks. The construction of the project is being delivered by the Barrow Blueway steering group, and that consists of members of Kildare County Council, Laois County Council, and ourselves in Waterways Ireland. The route is a total of 46 kilometres. 36 of that is an unbound surface. It's a stone and dust surface, as you can see in some of the images on your screen. That element of the project was delivered directly by Waterways Ireland with our own direct staff. And I project managed that, and those elements of the works were completed in 2023. The remaining 10 kilometres of the route is a bound surface, so either a tarmac or a surface dress surface, and it is made up of multiple locations at many of the bridge crossings or through the towns throughout the route. And this element of the works, this element of the works has the traffic management, the pedestrian management measures, car parks, access controls, and the likes. These works were led out by Kildare County Council with Feely Timoney as design consultants, and at present these works are approximately 70% complete. They started in 2023 and will be complete in the coming months. The Blueway is very much about the interaction with water, and the canal network already provides much of the infrastructure required in this regard. However, canoes, kayaks, paddleboards require additional facilities, and the need for these facilities has been identified through the course of this project, and detailed designs have been completed, and we are on target to commence the installation of these in 2024. Caroline, just that next slide, please. Thank you. So this brings us on to what have we left to do. The focus is now on the few remaining construction items to bring the project, or the construction elements of the project, to completion. A new pedestrian bridge is due to be installed in Rotangan later this year. The canoe infrastructure will be installed again directly by Waterways Ireland operations staff, starting in Q1 of 2024 for completion within the year ahead. And obviously the animation, which a lot of this presentation is about, but the animation of this product is then required, with the interpretive signage and content now at final proof stages. The installation of these bespoke totems and lecterns will progress along with the bike stands and the seats later on this year. And I suppose at this point, all of the items in the placemaking plan that are categorised as essential will have been complete. This will enable us to achieve our Blueway accreditation standards. And from a construction point of view, that will bring the construction phase of the project to an end. As managers and stakeholders of the asset, we then look forward to working with the users and the communities to collectively achieve the appropriate and exceptional items identified in the placemaking plan roadmap, and to continue to build on the successes that we've already achieved within the Barrow Blueway. And it's a really great, as a manager of this asset, it's really great to have this placemaking plan. It's almost like a shopping list of what we can do in the future and who we can work with. So I really look forward to that next stage of the project as we move into 2025. Thank you very much, guys.